And I can tell you probably grew up with the same twisted, dark sense of humor that I did, with maybe taking in John Waters movies and Tim Burton. Would you say that that's where your passions ignited as a storyteller and informed your fun tone here and your sense of humor?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, yeah, kind of movies like Edward Scissorhands and those kind of movies that are in some ways very complex and very rich, and kind of fairy tale like in the way they're presented within the genre, but then at the heart of them have a very in common. All those types of movies share a very, the movies always are based on a simple message. Whatever that message is, it's always kind of very simple. And with this one, it's the same thing. It's kind of like, ultimately, it's a story about a young man who's grieving. He's dealing with the process of grief during the course of the film.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Something that's such a joy watching this is how we, like, as an audience, take in the comedy from all different directions. Like, you really fill out the frame where the characters will be talking in the foreground, but you have something happening there or there. And so what process did you have in place for discovering all these fun details? And was there a balance there to not distract the comedy from, like, the comedy that's in the writing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really down to the casting. And it's kind of like, I'm a big believer that with actors, you hiring them to do a job. And sometimes when you're making a film, it's kind of, people can lose perspective that it's a job. So if you own a shop and you're hiring staff for your shop, you hire them because you think they're the best people for the job. They crack on, they do the job. So with actors, it's the same thing. It's like, I believe that the actor has been hired to do the job because they can do the job, and my role isn't to tell these guys how to suck eggs. It's not my job to tell them, say, right, do it like this, pick it up like this. I personally just don't believe in working like that. I kind of big believer in letting them loose, letting them do what they do. And we were, fortunate enough to pick a cast who all had very good comedy timing, who had, I think, different kind of nuanced approaches to comedy. And then also, to find the fact that, like, it's anchored around a credible performance from Max Harwood, and then who knew Hero Finds Tiffin was hilarious. There you go.
Right. How did you go about, like, I guess, working with each of your actors and how they normalize the chaos? Like, there's such fun beats to the language where there's, like, a bunch of dead puns and
yeah. That's a good question. I think, because for me, the way I approached it is, I tried to not direct, for example, the undead family. I tried not to focus in on the fact that they're undead. So the fact that, like, faces are falling off, arms are coming off, in the story, in the film, they don't really focus on that. So we're not focused on the undead and why they're undead and what's going to happen to the undead. The characters in the film, like us as an audience, are focused on and invested in Oliver's story and how each one of these people kind of interacts with Oliver and how they help his journey. We're not focused on the fact of, like, oh, this family are undead and what does that mean and how do I help these? We don't really touch on it. Stuff just happens with those guys and they're falling apart. But it's all about Oliver and Oliver's story. So my approach was to treat the directing the same way as if they weren't zombies, for example. And Oliver surrounded by zombies. Oliver's just surrounded by normal characters, and that was kind of my approach, was to kind of normalize it all, because there's so much crazy stuff going on. It's like, normalize it, focus on the story, focus on the characters, and by doing that, they brought a lot of the humor out because they just played it straight. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. So how did you keep a straight face when you have the likes of Ben Miller spewing out stuff as he's talking?
Yeah, I mean, it was it was just, a lot of the time it was very funny. Like, they're naturally a very funny group of people. I mean, we had a lot of fun making the movie. That's the thing. Like, we genuinely on really, really well. And I think that's evident on the screen. You can see that that's a cast where, sometimes you will make films and your friends will make films and the cast haven't necessarily got on that well, either with themselves or with the director.
Yeah.
And it makes the process difficult. It makes achieving what you want to achieve difficult. But with these guys, it was great. Like, they're always so enthusiastic, so down to do what we needed to do. and try stuff as well. So I mean, literally, I can't speak highly enough about the whole cast. Every single one of them was amazing. I thought, right? Really, really great.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to quickly transition to like the aesthetics here and all the accoutrement that you decorate the film with, like the lighting, the color palette, and a lot of the camera tricks. So I'll start with the camera tricks. Like it's so fun with like seeing the camera act as the dog that's about to get run over, and it looks like the wheel of the tire actually rolls over the camera. So I'm curious about the practicality of all that, how it worked out, and do you like? I guess I'm curious about your intake of film. Do you come up with these magic tricks on your own with your collaborators on the day, or are you just a constant consumer of film that's stealing from the greats and looking for ways to kind of come up with the visual language here?
Yeah, it was a good question. I think it's a kind of a mixture of both. I mean, you be a liar as a filmmaker to say, "Oh, I've come up with it all myself," and
Sure.
I kind of consume so many films, and and will always make sure whatever film I'm doing, I consume a lot of that genre at the time, and so it's kind of you're always influenced by other filmmakers and by other movies, and then simultaneously always trying to find a cinematic language that works for that film, and we'll try stuff, and it's a fine line between trying things and not being so jarring that it pushes the audience out of the film. So like cinematographer Håvard Heller, like he's always down for trying things and doing things, and the bit where like the POV letters, the dog's getting run over. I mean, that's just Håvard just being like probably be more risky with the camera than he should be.
Right.
But yeah, we always just like to try stuff that, for me, I wanted the film to feel like you're very much kind of in Oliver's world, and wanted to make sure we weren't doing anything at any point that kind of pushed you out a bit, but also making sure we were always trying to push the envelope with the language of the film, because it's such a colorful film, such a colorful language throughout the whole thing.
I love the way that it's edited too. I love like movies like Shaun of the Dead that have like this snappiness to it, but like the edit itself is part of it all, and so that was such a joy to see unfold as well.
Good, yeah. No, I think the editor, Jeremy Gibbs, I've worked with Jeremy a few times over the years. He's a good friend, and he has that sort of very dynamic approach. Some editors like a film to kind of really breathe and it be like kind of, but kind of have that more sort of snappy type feel, which I think lends itself very well in this film, because ultimately it's like there's bits of comedy, but it kind of, all of his journey is very simple. He's by himself. He needs to find friends, digs the family up, they come to life. He tries to, it's not like it's full of action and explosions and all that. So it's kind of like, it very much needed a pacey edit, particularly as you kind of get into the second and third act of the film, which I think Jeremy did a really good job with that.
Yeah. Did you, in your DP and your editor, all have a constant communication with each other throughout the filming of this, to where, like, for instance, the scene with like Oliver opening the caskets, and there's a fast twist to it, but it has a flow with it that's very fitting with the tone, but it's also like, I love those transitions.
Yeah. Because I mean, we basically had Jeremy and the assistant editor Ellis. We had them. Basically, they were literally at just 100 feet away from us and building outside the studio. So we had them there the whole time, the whole film. So me and Harwood, like on lunchtime, we'll go and sit with them and eat our lunch and kind of watch the film with them and see what's working, what's not, what we're doing coming up, and whether sometimes we need to do something a bit pacier than what we're doing, or something not as jazzy and less pacey. So I always find having an editor on set is super useful, because it's kind of like, especially with editors you work before, you kind of find your rhythm. So like the cinematographer, Harwood, and then Jeremy, the editor, we worked together before, so you kind of naturally get that rhythm, if that makes sense, which I think is, it's like a dancing partner, isn't it? Like if you have I'm not a dancer, so I don't know why I use that reference, but like if you dance with someone for the first time, it's finding your feet together, and then when you dance with someone many times, you know what they're going to do. So that, I think, is really essential when making films, that you have people around you who kind of know the way you're going to move.
Right. What about carrying that tone across production design and
Mm-hmm.
costume? Because like the color, like I mentioned, the color palette's fantastic, but obviously they're set in the 80s, and so there's a lot of great radical colors with like the wallpaper and the couches that take me back to my grandma's house. But was there a particular item on set that may have been like this is the movie, like this is going to inform the rest of it, or was it just more of like we found this, and then we puzzle piece it together?
No, it was we very much had this clear plan from the very beginning of what we wanted it to be, and like the archways and the like. When you look down the corridor and there's the archways, and then the living room has got that sort of open plan. And once we kind of got I remember like seeing like they put the carpet down, and then the sofa, and once that went in there, I was like, oh, okay, this is starting to like where everything else is going to go. And we had it all, they pre-visited it, and it really was like, it's always really nice to see when a set is kind of pre-vised three-dimensionally or whatever, and then you walk in it and you're like, oh shit, like this is exactly as these starts to come together in the bits, and then it just came together really well. And then like the final touch of the set was in Oliver's bedroom. You only see it in that one shot. I think there's an Alf toy in the corner. You get Alf plush that was actually mine. It was mine because I was talking to my mother about it. I said, no, we'll put Alf in the film, and she was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And I was like, yeah. And then she said, there's an Alf plush at like the family home. I was like, is there really? Which apparently was mine when I was a child. So I got this Alf plush, and we put it in the corner of the bedroom.
Yeah.
A lot of the paraphernalia and toys, collectibles, as I would call them, in Oliver's bedroom are actually, I have to admit, they are mine from my personal. But yeah, no, I was really happy with the house. I thought it looked really great. It's a consistent, elevated part of it is Oliver's world. The house is his world, and it's his one consistent thing that makes him feel safe. And I kind of wanted that house to be, that elevated sort of fairy tale look to it. So I'm super happy with the house. I realized like walking through it, and it was all there. You can move from one room to the other, and the bathroom was great. Like I really wanted to take a pee in the bathroom, but the toilet didn't work really. So, but it was a really just everything had such great detail. I loved it.
Yeah, for sure. I know we're about to run out of time, so I'll quickly ask. Speaking of Alf, it's so fun to see like Oliver, take lessons from Alf, and we get to see like how he applies them in his life. And so I'm curious if there's like any like unique connections to Alf beyond like what we may see like for the casual viewer, because I have a somewhat knowledge of it, but maybe there might be like little story beats or character beats that may be more of a grand connection that we may realize.
Yeah, but basically in the screenplay, they originally had Family Ties was in the but Family Ties I wasn't as familiar with because it wasn't like as popular in the UK. So when I was young, so Alf was something that I really enjoyed when I was a kid, and it resonated with me. It stayed with me. And what I liked about it, we put Alf in the film because it's a story about someone who's an outsider who is embraced by a family. So the whole point of Alf and watching Alf was that if Alf can find a family, then so can Oliver. That was kind of like my motive behind putting Alf into the film.